Both folktales and formal philosophy unsettle us into thinking anew about our cherished values and views of the world. The Hungarian folktale Pretty Maid Ibronka terrified and tantalized me as a child. In the story, the young Ibronka must tie herself to the devil with string in order to discover important truths. These days, as a PhD student in philosophy, I sometimes worry I've done the same. I still believe in philosophy's capacity to seek truth, but I'm conscious that I've tethered myself to an academic heritage plagued by formidable demons. The demons of academic philosophy come in familiar guises: exclusivity, hegemony, and investment in the myth of individual genius. As the ethicist Jill Hernandez notes, philosophy has been slower to change than many of its sister disciplines in the humanities. It may be a surprise to many, given that theology and, certainly, religious studies tend to be inclusive, but philosophy is mostly resistant toward including diverse voices. Simultaneously, philosophy has grown increasingly specialized due to the pressures of professionalization. Academics zero in on narrower and narrower topics in order to establish unique niches and, in the process, what was once a discipline that sought answers to humanity's most fundamental questions becomes a jargon-riddled puzzle for a narrow group of insiders. In recent years, canon expansion has been a hot-button topic, as philosophers increasingly find the exclusivity of the field antithetical to its universal aspirations. As J. Garfield remarks, it is as irrational to ignore everything not written in the Eurosphere as it would be to only read philosophy published on Tuesdays. And yet, academic philosophy largely has done just that. It is only in the past few decades that the mainstream has begun to engage seriously with the work of women and non-Western thinkers. Often, this endeavor involves looking beyond the confines of what, historically, has been called philosophy. Expanding the canon generally isn't so simple as resurfacing a standard philosophical treatise in the style of white male contemporaries that happens to have been written by someone outside this demographic. Sometimes this does happen, as in the case of Margaret Cavendish, 1623–73, whose work has attracted increased recognition in recent years. But Cavendish was the Duchess of Newcastle, a royalist whose political theory criticizes social mobility as a threat to social order. She had access to instruction that was highly unusual for women outside her background, which lends her work a standard style and structure. To find voices beyond this elite, we often have to look beyond this style and structure. Texts formerly classified as squarely theological have been among the first to attract significant renewed interest. Female Catholic writers such as Teresa of Avila or Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, whose work had been largely ignored outside theological circles, are now being re-examined through a philosophical lens. Likewise, philosophy departments are gradually including more work by Buddhist philosophers such as Dinaga and Ratnakirti, whose epistemological contributions have been of a special recent interest. Such thinkers may now sit on syllabi alongside Augustine or Aquinas who, despite their theological bent, have long been considered worthy of philosophical engagement. On the topic of worthiness, I am wary of using the term philosophy as an honorific. It is crucial that our interest in expanding the canon does not involve the implication that the philosophical confers a degree of rigor over the theological, literary, etc. To do so would be to engage in a myopic and uninteresting debate over academic borders. My motivating question is not what the label of philosophy can confer upon these texts, but what these texts can bring to philosophy. If philosophy seeks insight into the nature of such universal topics as reality, morality, art and knowledge, it must seek input from those beyond a narrow few. Engaging with theology is a great start, but these authors still largely represent an elite literate demographic, and raise many of the same concerns regarding a hegemonic, exclusive and individualistic bent. As Hernandez quips, W. E. No White, Western men have not cornered the market on deeply human, philosophical questions. And furthermore, we also know, prudentially, that philosophy as a discipline needs to, and must, undergo significant navel-gazing to survive, in an ever-increasingly difficult time for homogeneous, exclusive academic disciplines. In light of our aforementioned demons, it appears that philosophy is in urgent need of an exorcism.
Propose that one avenue forward is to travel backward into childhood, to stories like Ibronka's. Folklore is an overlooked repository of philosophical thinking from voices outside the traditional canon. As such, it provides a model for new approaches that are directly responsive to the problems facing academic philosophy today. If, like Ibronka, we find ourselves tied to the devil, one way to disentangle ourselves may be to spin a tale. Folklore originated and developed orally. It has long flourished beyond the elite, largely male, literate classes. Anyone with a story to tell and a friend, child or grandchild to listen, can originate a folktale. At the risk of stating the obvious, the folk are the heart of folklore. Women, in particular, have historically been folklore's primary originators and preservers. In From the Beast to the Blonde, 1995, the historian Marina Warner writes that the predominant pattern reveals older women of a lower status handing on the material to younger people. Folklore has existed in some form in every culture and, in each, it has brought underrepresented groups to the fore. As we look to expand the canon, folklore is a rich source of thought on topics of philosophic interest with the potential to uplift a wide range of voices who have thus far been largely overlooked. Folktales puzzle and surprise and haunt. They make us ask why. And they invite us to imagine new ways to respond. In his wry poem, The Conundrum of the Workshops, 1890, Rudyard Kipling describes Adam's first sketch scratched in the dirt of Eden with a stick. It was joy to his mighty heart. Till the devil whispered behind the leaves, "It's pretty, but is it art?" And so we may ask, folklore may be inclusive, but is it philosophy? To answer that question, one would need at least a loose definition of philosophy. This is daunting to provide, but, if pressed, I'd turn to Aristotle, whose metaphysics offers a hint. It is owing to their wonder that men both now begin, and at first began, to philosophize. In my view, philosophy is a mode of wondrous engagement, a practice that can be exercised in academic papers, in theological texts, in stories, in prayer, in dinner table conversations, in silent reflection, and in action. It is this sense of wonder that draws us to penetrate beyond face value appearances and look at reality anew. Given this lens, it is unsurprising that one solution to philosophy's crisis might be found in a childhood pastime. In childhood, we literally see the world with new eyes. Here, wonder is most keenly felt. We've all heard a child ask, "Why?" and realized not only that we don't know the answer, but that we'd forgotten how miraculously puzzling the question was to begin with. Wonder and folktales are likewise linked. Wundermärchen, the original German word for fairy tale, literally translates to wonder tale. Perhaps this is why children love folktales. In most cultures, folktales predate broad social distinctions between adult and children's entertainment. But as other flashier diversions have largely overtaken the adult sphere, folktales have maintained their spell over children. They speak the child's language. They puzzle and surprise and haunt. They make us ask why. And they invite us to imagine new ways to respond.